This is one of the most significant High Court criminal cases. It's a complicated read. The defendant was arrested in Melbourne Airport and charged with importing drugs into Australia in a hidden compartment in his luggage. He claimed that the drugs were planted and that he had no idea they were there. The first instance judge looked at the specific provision which penalised anyone who imports or attempts to import into Australia any prohibited imports to which this section applies. The section did not contain any specific requirements for mens rea, the mental state of the accused. The judge instructed the jury that the prosecution did not need to prove the state of mind of the accused, but that the defendant should be acquitted if the defendant proved on the balance of probabilities an honest and reasonable belief that there was nothing improper in his bag. He failed and was sentenced to life in prison. The High Court had to decide whether they should imply into the provision a mens rea requirement. If they did that, then the prosecution must prove that the defendant imported the substances either intentionally or recklessly. Can you see the difference? If there was no mens rea requirement, the defendant would have to prove his state of mind. If there was a mens rea requirement, the prosecution would bear the burden of proof. Chief Justice Gibbs began with the underlying common law presumption that mens rea is always required unless the Parliament displaces that presumption. He said that for this crime, it seems improbable that the Parliament would have intended that it might be committed as a result of mere carelessness. The gravity of the offence suggests that guilty knowledge was intended to be an element of it. Therefore, as soon as the defendant claimed that he had not known of the contents of the luggage, he raised a reasonable doubt, which the prosecution must disprove. Justice Dawson said, "The prosecution must prove his guilt and the accused is not bound to establish his innocence. It is sufficient for him to raise a doubt about his guilt, and this may be done by raising the question of honest and reasonable mistake. If the prosecution fails to dispel the doubt, then the accused must be acquitted." This case confirms that to displace the requirement for mens rea, the Parliament must use clear language, or mens rea will be implied.